What we're going to talk about is briefly describe option pricing models, and you could read 450 pages of Macmillan, or you could listen to this for 10 minutes and just get about the same gist, as there's a whole bunch of different scientific and mathematical models for pricing options. But the reality is it needs to be done in real time, and that's where the rubber hits the road, as opposed to theoretical pricing models, which seldom work because everything is moving in real time. Option price modeling. One is volatility. The second is time, interest rates, and also the price and nature and extent of the underlying asset. All right. Now, that's how most people perceive the criteria for options pricing models. But also there's an issue of supply and demand, and we're going to go over that in just a minute. Okay. So in order to really understand how an option is priced and how to select the best option as a surrogate for shares, which is what we're trying to do with long calls and long puts, that's going to be the primary model. What we're really looking at, though, as the basis for being able to effectively use options in any capacity is that we have to first understand that it's all directional. The nature of everything that we're doing is that we understand order flow and how to appropriately time the market and how to take low risk entries in any given cycle. Okay, that's paramount. And the one thing that I want to touch on is the fact that there's a difference between directional, which are the two ways to do this, directional and delta neutral strategies. Okay. Oops. Okay. Whoa, can't type there. Okay. Directional strategies require that you understand or have some implicit or explicit knowledge in where this thing is going to go, like which way the wind is blowing. Delta neutral strategies are theoretical models or strategies that assume that it doesn't matter what the underlying does, you're going to attempt to capitalize on what's most statistically likely to happen at a certain time in the future. Most strategies that do spreading or hedging are delta neutral, and that's an issue. That's why most option traders are abject failures, because you have to understand that the underlying asset's always moving around, and that theoretical pricing is theoretical in that given moment. As soon as volatility, as soon as time, as soon as interest rates, the underlying asset, supply and demand, anything moves, so do the methods which price this. And so the four things that we're going to look at, the four Greeks that we're going to look at briefly here for pricing these are as follows. Delta, which is the expected amount, the move in the option given a 1 point move, all things being equal, in the underlying asset. Okay. Gamma is the rate of change in delta, meaning how quickly, given a 1 point move in the underlying asset, how quickly does delta change? All right. And we're gonna touch on that in just a minute. Vega measures a price change versus change in the underlying asset's volatility. Okay, and theta is the rate of decay. So because Vega and Gamma are so transitory and theoretical, we're going to focus on theta and delta to make this very easy. We're going to focus on those two primary things when it comes to pricing an option and using it in lieu of a stock share. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to begin by looking at long calls and long puts right here. And we're going to consider a leap. We're going to begin with the leap. And a leap has a technical definition of usually like 1 to 2 years, but we're going to consider the leap any long call where we have established a surrogate for stock shares. So the leap is going to be our surrogate for the stock shares themselves. Okay. So we're going to begin with two ways to do that. And one is going to be the standard model, which is monthly options, monthly expiration. And the second one is going to be weekly expiration. So let's begin with the standard procedure. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is take a look at this. We want to choose a leap that is probably 4 to 6 months out is ideal. Now, why are we doing that? Because we need to avoid the wasting asset cycle. So that's the first thing that we need to do here. What you have to understand, I should probably have a training slide for this, but what you want to understand is options pricing models are theoretical. The world doesn't operate that way, and also nonlinear. Okay, so theta, what we described up here, is the rate of decay to expiration. That is theoretically an options price. Let's say an option has 4 months to expiration. Theoretically, theta will be so many pennies each day until expiration when the option is theoretically worthless. Okay. Now, that's what you would do to look at theta at any one given point in time. But the reality is theta is not linear. Okay. Theta is very, very slow until the wasting asset cycle, which is, as you can see in the slide, is 2 months, about 60 days out. So the option will have low theta until about 2 months out. It will hit the wasting asset cycle and theta will begin to expand exponentially. That's really, really crucial. Okay. So in order to use a long call or a long put in lieu of shares effectively, you need to have a leap that is not in the wasting asset cycle. You can't compete with theta day to day, especially on days or even a week where your stock takes a break and doesn't move. Okay, so that's the first thing that we want to do, avoid the wasting asset cycle. We're going to look at how to do that on the weekly in just a moment. Okay, the second thing is to choose a strike price that's slightly in the money. All right, and we're going to look at 1 to 2 striking prices in the money. All right, and what that's going to do is that's going to set up. So then we need a high delta, basically to avoid the gamma burn. All right, or delta burn. Okay, so now what happens is most novice option traders will choose a cheap option that's out of the money. The problem with that as a surrogate for shares is that once the stock takes off, there's going to be a lag. And depending on, first of all, if you're going long, volatility is crumbling, that's going to affect your option price. The second thing is, delta, there's a lag in delta between the time when the option is out of the money and goes in the money. If we begin slightly in the money with a delta of 65 or greater, high 60s, low 70s is best. That's the secret to having your option contract mirror price. As price takes off, so will your option contract. So gamma burn, obviously, since we know that gamma is the rate of change in delta, we want the delta to change right with the stock price, and we want our all things being equal, we want our option contract premium to swell as price increases. And again, remember, we're fighting volatility, so we need this to take off right away. Okay, so there it is. High delta avoids the gamma burn. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is, well, within that, so if we begin at 65 to 0.70, now what does this mean on a delta? This means that each $1 move in the underlying asset will give me 65 to 70 cents in profit on my premium. Now I'm leveraged. Why? Because that premium will eventually go to parity at 1. Where, okay, so I'm paying a premium, but I'm getting leverage where as the stock continues to move higher, my option each dollar will make more and more until I'm at parity with the stock, and that will expand my leverage. Okay, so that's what we want to cover there. All right. The last thing is we want to ensure that the option is liquid with a tight spread. Okay, so this is how we're going to take a quick, easy way in just a few minutes without having to know all the science and the math behind option pricing, that you can choose an option that will take off as soon as your stock does, given the fact that you understand directional order flow, how to create low risk entries or how to find them and how to exploit them.